Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to your final topic lesson of the week. Again, in topic we are going to be focusing on history. And in our lesson today, we are going to be focusing on what it was like to live in the 17th century, and we are going to be focusing on looking at what jobs people did. So our learning objective for today is we are going to develop an awareness of what it was life was like in the 17th century. Now here children, we have got a link that you can click on and you can watch a video and it will show you what the streets and houses were like in 1666. Now this PowerPoint is made available on our school website, so if you find the PowerPoint and click on that link, it will take you to that video. Now as we go through this PowerPoint, I want you to have some discussions with your grown-up. I want you to think about what would it be like if you were rich or poor during the 17th century? How would people communicate with each other? What would happen if people became ill? How did people get food and water? What would happen if there was a fire? So as we're going through the PowerPoint or at the end of the PowerPoint, you might want to come back to these questions and answer them with your grown-up. So we're going to be looking at jobs in the 17th century. And then we're going to think about whether those jobs are still done today in the present. So here we have a chimney sweep. So this was a job of somebody in the 17th century. Now chimney sweeps used to clean chimneys and fireplaces. Children were often used as apprentices because they were small. So if you can imagine a chimney in your house, it is very, very small and very narrow. And they used to use children to climb up the chimneys and clean them because they were small. And then we have an apothecary. An apothecary used to dispense medicines and make medicines from herbs, plants and roots. So they used to make medicines from herbs, plants and roots. We now have a blacksmith, and the blacksmith had a very important job, but they were paid very poorly. And they made objects from the metals iron or steel, and they would sharpen weapons and repair cooking utensils. So here is a picture of what a blacksmith would look like. And also in the 17th century, there would be a job of rat catchers, and they would catch the rats around the city. Can you have a discussion with your grown-up? Why do you think there were so many rats around the city? And the reason, children, that there were so many rats around the city is because back in the 17th century, it wasn't very hygienic and not as clean as it is in our towns and cities today. And there was lots and lots of rats running round all over the place. So that was why they had to have a rat catcher, because rats can spread really nasty germs and diseases and make people really poorly. So they used to have people catching rats. There used to be a gong farmer, and this person's job was to clean out toilets, so a very smelly job. They used to remove human waste from privies and cesspits. So privies would be an outdoor toilet. So people in the 17th century had their toilet in a little shed in their garden, not in the house like we have today. And a cesspit is a big tank that used to be underground, and that's where all the sewage used to go. So that person used to have a very smelly job. We also used to have a spinster, and a spinster was a lady, and she made her living by spinning wool and linen, and this was her spinning wheel. and that was usually a lady's job. There used to be a chandler. A chandler made and sold candles. And a scullery maid. And they were the lowest ranked worker in the kitchen. So they used to work in the kitchen. And their job was to clean the floor and the stoves, the sinks, pots and all the dishes in the kitchen. So they were cleaning lots of different things in the kitchen. There used to be a carpenter, and a carpenter made all different types of furniture and wooden items, and they were regarded as a master craftsman. So that means they were really good at making different types of furniture. Talk with your grown-up. Do we still have carpenters today? And we also have firefighters. Now, if we look at this picture of a firefighter, they look very different to what our firefighters look like today. Talk about what you can see that they are wearing. And firefighting was a very basic or little skill, so they didn't need to know much to do it. They used to use leather buckets to put out the fire, and they also used to carry an axe as well. So, as you can see, we have got a picture of the firefighter in 1666, and we have got a picture of a firefighter from today. And you can see that their uniform is very, very different. Talk with your grown-up. What do you think it was like to be a firefighter in 1666? And talk about with your grown-up, why do you think their uniform has changed so much over those years? And if you haven't already, children, go back to the questions at the beginning and see if you can answer those. We are now, children, going to move on to the next part of our lesson, and we are going to sort some pictures to do with firefighters. So, we have just learned about what life was like in the 17th century and all the different jobs that people used to do. But now we are going to really focus on the firefighters and compare what it was like in 1666 to the present. So in front of me, I have got some different pictures. Now, some are from the past and some are from the present. So here we have got a hose, and I want you to think about which firefighters would use a hose to put out a fire. We have got a horse and cart, so that would be a form of transport. We have got a fire extinguisher, and we have got a firefighter. Here we have got something called a gold syringe, and this was an object from the 17th century, and it was their fire extinguisher. It was made from bronze and wood, and it would blow out the fire. So that's a gold syringe. Here we have a fire engine. We have another picture of a firefighter, and then we have a leather bucket. So what you need to do is cut out all of your pictures so they are separated like this. And all of mine have been cut out, okay? So what we are going to do is we have got to sort them. So I have got 2 pieces of paper, one with past 1666 and one with present. And I'm going to start with 2 pictures. I'm going to start with my hose and the leather bucket. And I've got to decide and work out who uses or used the leather bucket and who uses the hose. So I know from the PowerPoint that firefighters in the 17th century used to use a leather bucket to put out the fire. So I'm going to stick that there. Then I know that firefighters today use a hose to put out the fire. So I would stick that there. And we are now going to write a super sentence to talk about what that object is and what it was used for. So I'm going to start with this picture here. Okay, so I'm going to remember my capital letters, my full stops and my finger spaces. So I'm going to start my sentence with a capital letter, in. In 1666, the firefighters used a leather bucket to put out the fire. Okay, now I'm going to read back my sentence. In 1666, the firefighters used a leather bucket to put out the fire. I'm now going to talk about what is used in the present. So, got my picture there. So, I could start with now, nowadays, in the present. Now, firefighters. Trying really hard with my joined up handwriting. Now, firefighters put the, that's a red word, the fire out using a long hose, and I know it sprays water on the fire. So now firefighters put the fire out using a long hose which sprays water onto the fire. And that is fire, fire, fire. Right, I'm going to read back my sentence. Now, firefighters put the fire out using a long hose which sprays water onto the fire. So now, after I've done those two sentences, I'm going to move on to the next pictures. So then I would look at these two. So I know one is a fire engine and one is a horse and cart. Well, I know in the present, because I see these on our streets and on our roads, that a fire engine is used nowadays. So that would be in the present. Okay? And I know from watching the videos earlier in the week and reading the PowerPoint today that the firefighters attend the fires in a horse and cart because that was the main form of transport in the 17th century. They had no cars, no trains, no buses. They had to use a horse and cart. So then I would write my two sentences about these two as well. Then I would move on to my next two pictures, decide which was past and which was present, and then decide which firefighter uniform look like this, and which firefighter's uniform is in the present. So children, that is your job to do now. I want you to cut out your pictures, and after you've cut out your pictures, you're going to sort them into past and present, and you are going to write some super sentences. Remember, when you have finished, children, to email your work, and the teachers in Year 2 can't wait to read your writing.